Hello and welcome to this special episode of Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers podcast. Today we have a returning special guest, which I'm really so happy to welcome. But before we get there, I want to say that today I'm recording from a different space, and so I have birds in the room. So if at some point during the interview you hear some jungle noises, well, you can close your eyes and pretend you're in the jungle because I can't do anything about the birds. So yeah, I hope that's not too much of an inconvenience. So today we have Antoinette Mc Weeney. She's an homeopath specializing in women's hormonal health, menstrual educator, lecturer at the Helsinki School of Homeopathy, and facilitator of online and in-person courses since 2010. So welcome back, Antoinette. It's so lovely to have you back on the show.
Matilda, thanks a million. Thank you for inviting me back. And it's lovely to be here. It's lovely to be here with you and your birds today.
Yeah,
what was making the noise?
We can pretend we're not in Ireland in winter, but we're like in some, I don't know, Costa Rica maybe or somewhere.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that.
So today Antoinette is here to talk to us about perimenopause. And I invited you back, Antoinette, because this is such an important topic. And as daughters of narcissistic mother, we may have been through a lot of misinformation on this, as in, I know from my own experience, I've seen my mother going through it, and she was in complete denial of it, and the intensity of all the toxic behaviors went up. And then things such as, you're gonna go through the same, wait when it's your turn, you're gonna understand me when you get there, kind of thing. So it can get very intense to observe. And as when we were talking in the previous episode that we did together about the menstrual cycle, we may not have had any information coming from our mother, coming from our lineage of women, that was actually in any way useful to then get to this phase of our life and navigate it. I definitely haven't. And I know with listeners, I get questions all the time, and with clients, when we get to this phase, they're very confused. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. And it's a phase that gets a lot of resistance. Of course, we're not happy to be in this phase. We don't like it. We hate it. And it makes us emotional and all of that. So that's why I called you on, so we can bring some more clarity. And I know you have beautiful steps for people to take, and you're also offering support on this. So I'm going to leave you the microphone and let you take the floor.
Well, I hope I can shift that perspective a little bit, because it doesn't have to be, we don't have to follow in our mother's footsteps. We don't have to follow in anybody's footsteps, when we're going, making this transition. And it is a transition. It's a transition from the first half of our lives into the second half of our lives. And every single thing about us changes on a cellular level. And some people absolutely glide through it and others don't, but our expectation is very important. So if we're expecting something to be really, really difficult, then it probably is, and our expectation is based on our experience. Or also our expectation is based on what the media is telling us, because at the moment there's huge focus on perimenopause and all the issues that are going to arise, and we are having paid actors telling us about their journeys and what they have done. And usually that road leads straight onto HRT. And HRT is absolutely fine for anybody who's on it. And this is not meant to shame anybody who's on HRT, but there are other steps that we can take for ourselves before we go on to HRT. Because if we go straight onto that, and some people don't realize that there are steps, that there's anything that they can do themselves. They just feel that their body is broken, things are not working the way that they should. And I really want to educate people around that, because our bodies aren't broken. They're just shifting and changing and upgrading. And we don't have to go straight for a pharmaceutical. Where was I going to go with that? This is like our second puberty. So when we go into puberty the first time, we suddenly get the influence of this hormone estrogen, and we hear a lot about estrogen in perimenopause. And estrogen begins to come into our bodies, and it rises during the first part of our cycle, and then it shrinks off, it decreases for the second half of our cycle. But estrogen is a hormone. It's called the forgetting of self hormone. So it's a time, it comes into our lives at a time when we stop focusing so much on ourselves, when we're girls and the world is all about us and the world revolves around us, and it's a great time. And then we get this estrogen, which has so many jobs to do, and it helps in our creativity and of course with babies and all of that, but there's more to estrogen than babies. But it makes us forget a little bit about who we actually are and our place in the world. And instead of looking inwards all the time, we start to look outwards, and we start to ask ourselves, how can we help our community? How can we help others? It really amps up the nurturing dial on us. And this is really essential for when we have our own children, because if we didn't have estrogen, we wouldn't want to be looking after these little ones who are so reliant on us. And then when we get into perimenopause, maybe early 40s, early to late 40s, and it can be earlier for some women, that estrogen begins to decline. And suddenly the fog lifts, and we are like, where am I in all of this? I've been lost in myself for years. We may be looking at our children who are still reliant on us. We may be looking at elderly parents that we're now having to look after as well. We could be looking at a relationship that is broken. And there's this kind of waking up. And it can be, we can wake up gently, or we can wake up like, oh my God, what has my life become? And that's what estrogen does. And then as it continues to decline, we do start to look more at ourselves and our own needs and all these issues that have been building for years, because it's not a quick thing. We don't suddenly wake up with bone aches and hot flashes and maybe irregular periods. These are going on for a long time in the background, but they've been mostly ignored because we're focused on other people. But when we start to focus on ourselves again, we can either ignore all of these messages that are coming from our body, and we can go and get our prescription, or we can start to address them, and we can start to make changes, because these are the changes now that we need to put into place for the next 40 years of our lives. So that is estrogen, and it doesn't just decline. And this is what we're told about in perimenopause, that it declines rapidly. Our bones are going to get brittle. We won't be able to think. Our skin is going to look horrendous. We're going to put on loads of weight. That's nothing to do with estrogen. That's insulin. We are going to lose all interest in sex. Our relationship is going to suffer. We're going to be irritable, contrary, blah, 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 because estrogen declines. But estrogen doesn't actually decline. It skyrockets for about 3 to 5 years. And that's what can cause the irritability. And this is also why there is no test. There is no blood test done to determine perimenopause. Because, and it was done up until a few years ago, people were having blood tests. And if there was high levels of estrogen in the blood test, which is only a snapshot of that moment in time, women were told, you're not in perimenopause, you're too young, and they were dismissed, and their issues were dismissed. So now it's not being done. It's not, perimenopause is diagnosed on the symptoms. And there's some of the symptoms that I mentioned, the brain fog, aches and pains, inflammation in the body, very heavy periods or missing periods. Basically, anything that a woman is presenting with between the age of 35 and 55 is put down to perimenopause. So a lot of things are being overlooked, and a lot of serious things are being overlooked. So we really have to advocate for our own health in this period of time. And even if we're on HRT already, if any of your listeners are already on hormone replacement therapy, please do check in with your healthcare provider every 6 months and make sure that everything is okay, that you're feeling okay. Check for breast changes, check in with yourself. How are you feeling mentally, emotionally? How are you doing? And keep advocating for yourself, because HRT is fine for some women, but for some it has caused a lot of problems. And I suppose from my point of view, I'm only seeing the women that it has caused problems for, like the breast lumps and the cancers, or maybe the very low mood, and then women are put onto antidepressants, and that's what they're kind of left on for the rest of their lives. Whereas instead of really grabbing this opportunity to have a good old shakeout, a good old clear out, they're taken on a different journey. So one of the problems I have with a lot of the stuff that we're being told at the moment, and it's coming from holistic outlets and it's coming from the more standard medicalized outlets, is that the words perimenopause and menopause are interchangeable, that they're the same thing, and they're so completely different. So perimenopause is the period, the time frame leading up to your last period. And that can be, for some women, that can be like 2 years. And for others, it's generally 10 to 12 years. So it's a long time of this change in estrogen up and down. And I have a podcast myself, an hour-long podcast that goes into this in more details, because there's 4 different stages in perimenopause, and things change the whole way through those 12 years. So you can go into perimenopause in your late 30s. And again, a lot of women are being dismissed when they're going to their healthcare provider with these symptoms, and they're maybe told they're depressed or they're anxious, that they're too young to be in perimenopause. But you're not too young to be in perimenopause in your, say, 38. If you're going to have your last period at 50, that's you're fitting exactly into that time slot. So perimenopause, generally the 2 to 12 years leading up to your last period, sorry. And then menopause is only a moment in time. It's when you reach that 12-month mark from your last period. That's all. So menopause is actually quite a small thing compared to the 12 years of perimenopause. And I hear doctors using that as well, using the wrong terminology, and they're talking about all these symptoms of menopause, and they're actually talking about perimenopause, because they're talking about heavy periods and skipping periods. There's no periods in menopause. They're over. And when I hear somebody using the wrong terminology, I lose faith straight away. I am God. So I want to talk about the 2 main, and I have some slides here to remind me, but I'm not going to put them up on the screen. The 2 main hormones that we're dealing with in perimenopause, and that is, can you see me okay, Matilda, still?
I can, yes.
Okay. So estrogen and progesterone. I just want to see, can I put you back up as well? Just because I want to be able to see you too at the same time. Okay, so I can see you. So estrogen and progesterone, and we produce estrogen at the beginning of our cycle, and then once we ovulate, which is really important, ovulation is so important, and I am going to talk about it. Once we ovulate, estrogen starts to dip naturally in our cycle, and progesterone comes into play then. And the 2 of them work hand in hand, and they're kind of like good cop, bad cop. Estrogen is the hormone that wants us getting out there and doing loads of stuff and being really creative and partying all night long. Well, we don't party all night long, but in an ideal world, this is what estrogen would want us to do. It makes us feel really good in ourselves. It makes our skin plumper, so we have less wrinkles. We almost take on a glow around ovulation. And then progesterone is the one that's saying, come on now, come on, you need a few early nights. You need to calm down. You need to relax. You need to look after your sleep. You need to look after yourself. And if we ignore progesterone, then she tends to scream towards the end of our cycle, and we get really bad PMS, PMT, just very irritable, very tired. But it's just because the progesterone has been ignored and her needs have not been looked after. And I see the 2 of them as 2 women, of course, the partier and the one who's dragging her home, saying, come on, get some water into you and get to bed. And that's how I see the 2 of them. So we have estrogen that is skyrocketing during perimenopause for one particular phase of perimenopause, and it is dipping and diving. And during that particular stage, it wouldn't be a good time to go on HRT, which is synthetic estrogen, because you end up getting more estrogen into your body, which will actually enhance all your symptoms and could lead to these. It's the growth hormones. So that's why we can get issues with our breasts and with lumps and bumps during that time. So it wouldn't be a good time to go on HRT. What we need to do is balance the 2 of them and support what we already have. And the way that we do that is, for estrogen, when we have this excess of estrogen in our body, when we're at that skyrocketing phase, the way we expel that is through a really a really healthy gut and having regular bowel movements. So if your listeners are somebody who suffers from constipation, now is really the time to look at that. Because if we're not having a regular bowel movement, we're holding this excess estrogen in our bodies. So this is the time to look at our digestion and our gut health, if we haven't done so already, because they're both hugely important when it comes to the production of hormones. And a disordered gut can really affect how we're feeling in our menstrual cycle as well. Have a look at your diet. Things that mimic estrogen, like soy products. So for vegans and vegetarians, this can be a tough time, especially if they're reliant on these sort of meat replacements. I'm vegan myself. I've had to look a lot into my own diet at this stage. So remove all the soy products, the soya milk, the soya yogurts, the soy cheese. They're not helping. They're just making our body think that it's real estrogen, and it's exacerbating the symptoms. And then vegetables like cabbage and kale and broccoli are really, really good to help balance our estrogen and to help push it out of the body as well. So we need to focus on the gut. We need fiber. We need these green veg, and we need to remove the synthetic soy products from our diet. And that's estrogen. And if we can balance the estrogen, especially when it's in this up and down phase, which lasts up to 3 years, we can go a long way in stabilizing our mood and helping our focus and our concentration and all of that. So that's one step that we can start doing today. We can look at, am I actually going to the toilet enough? Am I removing all of this excess estrogen that's just ricocheting around my body? Or is it just sitting in there? So we can start to look at that today. And then the other one is progesterone. So we need to balance the estrogen, remove the excess, and then we want to lift the progesterone, and we want to support that, because that is really helping us with this estrogen that's kind of like at the rodeo for the day, having a great time for herself. And the way we do that is to have our really good animal proteins and fats. Again, low-fat diets, they probably never really serve us women. We have different needs to what is thought, and we do need our good fats, and we need our omegas. So these low-fat diets, they don't support the production of progesterone, which is so important to us to help keep us calm and stable, and it really minds us. So if you're not having the good animal proteins and fats, you've really got to look at things like coconut oil and avocados and nuts and seeds and dark chocolate. And magnesium. Magnesium is in dark chocolate. I found magnesium really, really good. There's several different types of magnesium. There's some that support gut health, that help with the with a regular bowel movement, and there's others that support the nervous system, and then there's other types that help with sleep. If you can get a decent magnesium that is working with all those three, that helps. Because I was having issues myself sleeping. I was waking up in the middle of the night or not able to get to sleep, and when I take my magnesium, I sleep so much better. You can also get magnesium in Epsom salts. So if you have an Epsom salt bath, that's a lovely way to get it in as well. So that's our progesterone. So we need to support that, build on what we have there, and then get rid of the excess estrogen. Just let's see, Matilda, if I have missed anything here. A top tip for anybody watching or listening is to reclaim your ovulation. A lot of us haven't ovulated probably since whenever we started using contraceptives. And there is a push towards girls. We now get free birth control in Ireland and in other countries as well. There's a push towards girls getting on the pill as quick as possible because their friends are on it, and really there's no need to have periods and blah, blah, blah. And our menstrual cycle has about 10% to do with us having babies and having periods. The rest of it is about building really strong future for ourselves. So we ovulate. If we're not being controlled by, if our cycles aren't medicalized and if we're not on contraceptives, we ovulate 13 times a year. It's our feminine number 13 times a year. If you've got a regular cycle, and for up to 40 years, which is a long time. So that's between 400 and 500, 520 opportunities that we have to ovulate in our lifetime. And every time we ovulate, we boost our brain function, we boost our thyroid health, we strengthen our bones, we reduce inflammation in our bodies. And these are all the signs of perimenopause, aren't they? You know, brittle bones, brain fog, thyroid dysfunction, aches and pains everywhere. And I really feel if we were able to claw back at least a few ovulatory phases towards the end of our cycle, we're doing something. We're doing something to help ourselves. Every single time we ovulate, our future perimenopausal self is going, yes. But for so many of us, that opportunity has been shut down because, you know, we don't want to get pregnant, or you know, our friends are not having periods. Periods are a little bit of a nuisance. We really need to re-educate ourselves and take back this amazing power that we have within our bodies, instead of stopping it for maybe 30 years, and then we really struggle at the end of our menstruation, in our perimenopausal time, with all these things that are showing up, because our bodies are not broken. And this is what I just want to lights my this for a second. Our bodies aren't broken, they were never broken. And that's the message that we're getting, is that everything now has just gone into decline. We're old, we're no longer fertile, our bones are getting brittle, we can't stand up without breaking the bone. But actually we have all those things there in place already to help prevent all of these issues. We just don't know about it. So I would say, if for anyone listening, watching, if you can start ovulating again, claim it back. Some people are on the pill or have coils fitted, and they're not actually even in relationships anymore. Maybe the relationship has split up, the reason why they went on it in the first place, if it's for birth control. Other people go on the pill for acne. And but you know, maybe that is already cleared as well. The reason the pill works for acne is it dries out everything. It dries out the skin, it dries out the natural oils, it also causes vaginal dryness. Other people maybe had very heavy periods, you know, 10 years ago, had very heavy periods and still have a coil, could be on their second or third coil now, and have no idea what's happening with their periods. And I understand there's huge fear around that, especially if the periods were very heavy. But what you can do is go to somebody like me, somebody who will detox all the synthetic hormones that are in your body, and you'd be surprised the difference women have just from getting rid of the backlog of toxins that's there, the backlog of synthetic hormones. You can do all of that before you have the coil removed, or before you stop the pill, and just get back ovulating again. So I speak to so many people who still have coils in maybe 10 years after a relationship broke up, and they've been told things like, well, you may as well leave it in. Or, you know, when they go to get it out after the 5 years, there's another one put in automatically, regardless of whether it's needed for preventing pregnancy, or maybe they don't even have periods anymore. The periods could be long over, but we don't know. We're sort of kind of blind to what's going on. You know, when we don't have a period, we can't really judge where we're at in our perimenopause, or where we're at in our day-to-day living, either what's actually going on. When we shut down all of this, it's kind of like, I have 2 lights on the dashboard of my car at the moment, and they're really annoying me, and I feel like putting my hand over them when I'm driving, so they just annoy me. And that's a little bit what it's like when you're on contraceptives. You're just covering up what's actually going on, or you're kicking the problem down the road to be dealt with later. And I know lots of people are on contraceptives for different things, but for those who don't need to be on contraceptives, it would be great to just get rid of them out of your body, have a detox, and reclaim the ovulation, which is really going to stand to us in our perimenopause. It stands to us right from the beginning, from the age of 13, 14. When I'm talking to girls about their periods, I make sure to mention ovulation, because that's when everything gets stronger and they get sharper and more focused as well. And there's 2 main parts in our cycle is the ovulation and when we're bleeding. And they both have hugely different roles, but very important roles. Have you any questions so far? Am I just hitting you with a load of information?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It is a lot of information, but it's such potent information. And I've actually, well, first of all, I wanna say for everyone listening in, I have been on with you, Antoinette, and I have gone through the detox, and I have gone through. You've supported me through my own start of the perimenopause and going through that, and the benefits have been massive. But also when you mentioned that we need to reclaim our health and understand our bodies and know what our bodies are doing, because I'm 40 next month, so I'm there. It was all very much focused on the whole perimenopause thing, and of course the whole mistake between menopause and perimenopause was just mentioned. And I then discovered that actually, yes, after doing the work with you, which cleared all the hormonal stuff and brought a lot of things into balance, that kind of highlighted for me what was actually not in balance. I had other underlying problems that were not related to that, but because everyone was telling me, oh, that's what it is, I never actually thought about it. And then now I'm actually taking care of all this other underlying stuff that was being mistaken for perimenopausal symptoms. So it's really, I just wanted to say that to reinforce everything that you've said. It's such an important thing, and there's a lot of misinformation on it. So yeah. Keep going. If you have more to tell us, that's really, really useful.
Okay. I did mention that I had my own perimenopausal moments as well. And the things that I've been doing, so I mentioned diet and how important that is. You know, what we're fueling our bodies with is crucial to how we're feeling. If we're eating really rubbish foods, then we're going to feel rubbish. And if we're not getting enough sleep, and so many women in their perimenopausal years are now looking after elderly parents. And they could be staying 2-3 nights a week with an elderly relative, and they're not getting sleep. And that could be up in 21 hours sleep a week that's been completely wiped out. And we can't actually catch up on sleep. So women are pushing and pushing themselves beyond all limits. They've gone so far beyond their natural limits, they can't even see their limits anymore. And that's something we really need to address. And women do need, it's a societal problem as well. Women need more support, and they're not getting it. So they're pushing on through, and their health is really, really suffering. So sleep, very important. And so many women are, even if they're not looking after elderly parents, they're not able to get to sleep quickly, or they're waking up several times during the night. So establishing a really good sleep routine is important. It's vital. It's absolutely vital. Sleep first, then food afterwards. So I ask my clients to have a look at their sleep routine and what are they doing at nighttime that could be maybe hindering a good night's sleep. And some people are exercising at nighttime because it's the only chance that they're getting. So they could be doing a high intensity kind of workout at 9 o'clock at night. And that's one of the things that we need to, it's another of the things we need to address in perimenopause, is that the high intensity exercise is not helping us because it's producing stress hormones, which are going to send our reproductive hormones crazy. I've had to look at, for me, it was my diet was absolutely chronic, and I didn't realize it was so bad. It was so deficient in protein, and protein is our friend in perimenopause. It's our friend from our mid-30s because women start to lose muscle mass, and that's another thing we hear about in perimenopause. You have to mind your muscles. That's why you need HRT. But if we could increase our protein, and I mean increase it sufficiently, I would say I had no protein between the age of 13 when I went vegetarian and possibly 47. I don't know how I'm walking around. I don't know how my muscles have the strength. So we need about 30 grams of protein with each meal. That's a lot. It's a lot of protein. Over the day, we need about 120, 130 grams of protein. So I found that really hard because I am vegan, and it means I had to change everything I was having in my diet. You know, the toast in the morning had to go, and I had to get straight onto porridge with loads of chia seeds and loads of nuts and seeds. It's easier if you're not vegan because you can use cottage cheese, you can have eggs, you can have even smoked salmon in the morning. But if we're hitting the target for protein, then we're able to build muscle. We can't build muscle without protein. And then we eat enough protein and do some weightlifting. And it doesn't have to be, when I say that, people go, oh my God, weightlifting. I have some weights here in the little purple ones, they're fierce cute. And I can just be doing this, you know, that's weightlifting. Some squatting is weightlifting because you're using your own, the weight of your own body. Squats, yoga, all of those things are really good for building muscle. And when we build muscle, and there's more about this in my presentation that is available. When we build muscle, we have these insulin receptors in our muscle, and that helps us to deal with all the excess insulin that starts to be produced in our perimenopause. And it's one of the reasons we put on weight in perimenopause, because we have this excess insulin. But if we build muscle, there are receptors in the muscle that's able to deal with the insulin and is able to deal with the excess weight. So that sleep and protein, looking at our diet, getting much more protein into our diet, and fiber, of course, to eliminate the estrogen, are things that everybody could do. So that's what I had to do for myself. I had to take magnesium because I was waking up several times during the night. I had to increase my protein because it was shocking. And there was a few times that I got really, really anxious. So I have walked this walk with everybody else where my anxiety just went through the roof, and I didn't know what was causing it. Waking up panicking in the middle of the night, and had to really think about what was good. I felt like I was losing my mind at times. I felt like my relationship was going to fall apart. I was terrified for my kids. It was just absolute panic. And the last time I was like that was probably Christmas, not last year, the year before. And I got up one morning and I was just like, I have to get out of here. I have to get out. And I went to the Hill of Tara and I walked around the Hill of Tara. My heart was pounding and I said, what is different? What is going on? The only thing that was different was I'd been drinking more alcohol because it was Christmas. And it had really spiked the anxiety. So now I say to my clients, what's your alcohol intake like? And I know myself that alcohol is, a lot of women are drinking way too much alcohol because they're using it to medicate, to self-medicate, to help them wind down in the evenings. And it does that job, you know, that's absolutely fine. It helps people to relax, but people they feel they need that because they're so stressed the whole time, because there's so much going on, and maybe they're relying on coffee, and they're spiking their cortisol levels all day long, and then at night time they're just like, ooh, and they have all this anxiety going on, and then they're drinking wine, settle down, but then they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because the liver is like, oh help. 3 to 5 is when the liver is trying to detox. So it's this horrible vicious cycle of trying to relax, but it's intensifying the problem, because then you have the lovely relaxed stage, but then you have to pay the price for that. The alcohol is another thing that is it's also causing inflammation, and it's giving us so much extra sugar that we're not able to deal with, sending us into insulin problems, pre-diabetic, and all of that. This sounds awful, doesn't it? Like, it's all these things we have to cut out your exercise, you have to cut out your wine, but you don't have to cut out everything. But it is a time of moderation and looking at what's working and what isn't. And sometimes we're so busy and we're so focused on everybody else, we don't have time to actually sit down and think, now hang on, I felt okay yesterday, but I felt terrible the day before. Is there anything that changed between those 2 days? Is there anything that I can do to help myself? I'm going to go back to my notes, Matilda, for a second, because I have steps that people can take, that they can start doing right now to help themselves. I have kind of a 3-step plan. I would always love if people go through the steps, try step 1 themselves, see what they can do for themselves. Step one is what we can do right now to start improving our quality of life and having a nicer time through our perimenopausal years. Step two is when to get help, where to look for help, and step three is the next stage. So step one is to really look at our stress levels. I said stress can really override the hormones. And one of the things, a really simple thing that we can do straight away is stop having coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. So when we wake up in the morning, we get this natural hit of cortisol, and that's what gets us out of bed. It gets us up, even though we're feeling tired, groggy, or whatever. And if we can go and have a high protein breakfast at that stage, or within maybe 90 minutes of getting up, it helps to balance out that cortisol, that spike that we get in the morning. But instead of going for the egg breakfast, the scrambled eggs, or the porridge, or the chia and all that, some people are going straight for a coffee, and that's what's getting them going. And that triggers another cortisol spike, another cortisol release. And now they're dealing with two stress responses first thing in the morning. And it's very hard to start to balance that during the day. And then we're dipping and we're having more coffee, so it's more cortisol. So that's a really simple thing to look at straight away for somebody who's very stressed, dealing with a lot of anxiety. Stop the early morning coffee on an empty stomach. Have it after your breakfast, have a good breakfast, and then have it then and really enjoy it. Avoid constipation. I was talking about that's how we get rid of all the excess estrogen, is maintaining a really good, healthy gut. Look at reducing our sugar levels. Sugar is such an inflammatory thing, and it's in everything. It's in all processed foods. It's in stuff that you don't even expect it to be in. It can be in tinned tomatoes. It's everywhere. It's causing inflammation in our body. It's drying out our bodies. And when we reduce it in any form, including alcohol, we reduce that risk of inflammation. And when our bodies are very inflamed, we're more susceptible to injuries. I went through a phase, I couldn't get out of the chair without hurting myself. It's ridiculous. But it was inflammation in my body. So reducing the sugar. Increase the omegas, the healthy fats, our animal fats, if you're not vegan or vegetarian. That helps with that inflammation as well, but it helps with our skin, our bones, any dryness anywhere in the body. The omegas and the healthy fats will help with that. Increase the protein, and that's for our muscle medicine. And I go into muscle medicine more in my other presentation. And we need the protein to build the muscles. And it's not just so we can look good, it's so we're able to get out of a chair when we're 90, just to keep strong, some level of strength. I have said here, read labels. Reading labels is something I've gotten a little bit obsessive about. And I think it's not a bad obsession. If I remember to bring my glasses, it might say something on the front of a pack, like, for example, protein. And there's a woman I've been following called Sophie Morris. She's an Irish nutritionist, and she's absolutely brilliant at getting people to read the labels on food. And this is mostly processed food, okay? But it can be breads, and it can be things that are really promoting themselves as being high protein, because high protein is a real buzzword, and it's been marketed at women because these food producers know that women are looking for protein to build muscle, blah, blah, blah. It's a big thing in perimenopause. So at the front, it could say high protein yogurt. I mentioned cottage cheese earlier. Yogurt, Greek yogurt, it could say high protein. And then when you turn it around and you look at the label, it may not be half as high in protein as you think it's going to be. And it could be really high in sugar, which completely defeats the purpose, because you're trying to reduce your sugar and not have loads of sugar. So do look at that. I think 1 teaspoon of sugar is about 5 grams. It's about 5 grams of sugar. And then when you look at some of these yogurts that are being pushed and marketed towards women, there could be 6 spoons of sugar in a small tub of yogurt. So do look for that. Muscle medicine, think about how you can start building the muscles. So that is the yoga, the weightlifting. It can be tins of beans. It can be your own. We can lift weights with just empty hands, just using the weight of our body. just using the resistance of our body. And that can be just holding your arms out like that. That can start to build muscle. Journaling. Start writing out how you're feeling. And I would actually put Matilda's services into this as well, in the step 1, because we can have all these things rattling around our head. And sometimes we can't even express how we're feeling. We need the prompts. We need somebody to draw it out of us. So Matilda, I know you've run women's circles and you work one-to-one with women as well, as far as I know. Somebody like Matilda who can help you talk through how you're actually feeling, instead of having them all rattling around here and you're not doing anything with them. Talk to somebody or journal. A journal, if you start journaling, even if you're burning it straight afterwards, at least you're moving all these thoughts, these feelings, you're moving them onto the page, and then you can get rid of them or you can keep it, whatever you want to do. But it's a means of processing how you're feeling. And we need to increase the fun. We don't have enough fun in our lives at all.
I totally can say amen to that.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes we think that, oh, I'll get away with my friends every 6 months, or that's not enough. We need something to look forward to every week, and even something every day, and something fun. That depends on the person. I love singing. I absolutely love singing. And the last 2 weeks, there's been women coming here on a Sunday to sing. And we're prepping for a concert, a Christmas concert, and I feel so good afterwards. That's me. That's my medicine. Singing medicine is my medicine. And I play music, and I'm off to play music tonight. And that's twice a week. I get to do something I absolutely love that fills my cup. It makes me feel really good. And then we don't feel so resentful. You know, when we are looking after other people, if we have something for ourselves, and that's something, it could be something else. It could be a walk with a friend. It could be a walk with the dog and listen to a podcast. Something that's just for us, if we can manage that at all. It could be an early night. There's nothing better than an early night, a foot massage. You can do it yourself and just get into a nice clean bed, a nice clean sheets. You know, that is somebody's, I quite like that myself. And the last thing in step 1 is to look at your sleep. Really push yourself to get better quality sleep. And that doesn't have to be a sleeping tablet. That can be reducing your screen time in the evening, not doing something that's going to get you all fired up again, like, you know, the exercise, the high intensity exercise, or cleaning the house at 11 o'clock at night. So many women, I've clients who are doing that because they've got this excess adrenaline in their body, so they may as well use it, they think, but they have the excess adrenaline there because they've pushed themselves too far. That is step 1, if everybody's still with me. And then step 2 is things you can get help with. So you can come to somebody like me and get a contraceptive detox, or maybe an IVF detox, something where there has been a lot of synthetic hormones in the body. And if we clear out all the synthetic hormones, we have much better foundations to build our perimenopause and our natural hormones on. And you can also, I also do things like I balance hormones, and I balance blood sugar levels for anybody struggling with pre-diabetes and insulin stuff. You can go to a reflexologist, a kinesiologist. Again, Matilda, you fit into this. You fit into step 1 and 2, seeing somebody like Matilda, getting counselling, talking to somebody. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is when you need other help. And that's when if you've tried some of these things, at least some of them, then see your GP and ask for insulin testing, ask for full panel thyroid testing, and maybe consider HRT if nothing else has worked. And that is, I'm back to you. They are my suggestions for helping with perimenopause, but this is not something we hand over to somebody else. We don't hand our care over to somebody else. We step back into our own power. There's so much that we can do ourselves, so much. And you know, even if we go straight for HRT, but we haven't addressed any of the other things like our diet and our sleep, and maybe the counselling to help deal with all the stuff that has come up, because like I said, it's now estrogen is starting to drop off, and we're starting to remember ourselves and remember our own issues. And that's why a lot of old traumas can come back up. Also, you mentioned narcissistic mothers, this is probably a time when their behaviors intensified because of hormones going like that, especially estrogen. So I would imagine it was a really, really tough time to be around somebody like that. And that's kind of really all I have to say on it. I know it's an awful lot of information, but if people can just take something out of the steps, something to heal themselves, start healing themselves, something to support themselves, maybe start with the fun, looking for some more fun. I know a lot of women that I'm dealing with have forgotten how to have fun, and they can't remember what they used to do for themselves, because I always ask people, what do you do for yourself? You know, where are you happiest? And I get the same response over and over, which is, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah,
So,
I get the very same when I'm talking to
yeah.
clients. So yeah.
Yeah, and we're creative beings, you know, when we're not making babies, we are making other things. We're probably naturally artistic in some way, and even if we could put some focus into that, and for me, that's singing and playing music. For other people, being artistic is painting, like what you're doing. Somebody else, it's baking, it's sewing. It could be plaiting your child's hair, just something to start looking beyond how awful we're feeling in ourselves, and to shift some of that resentment and the tiredness. The tiredness is huge, but that's because we're wrecked. We've been doing way too much for so long, and our body is just catching up now and saying, hello, you need to address this now. You know, some women are surviving on 3-4 hours sleep every single night, because maybe that started when they had small babies and they've never been able to get a proper sleep routine back. You know, we wouldn't run our cars with no diesel and maybe only 2 wheels, and it overheating the whole time. But yeah, we run our own bodies like that. We run them into the ground, and then we tend to get a little surprised when we're like, oh, where's this anxiety coming from? Or why am I getting these pains? Oh, well, it must be perimenopause, and perimenopause is so bad. It's not, it's our wake-up call.
Yes, it is a wake-up call. And thank you so much for all of this amazing information that is so empowering. And what I love about this is that it brings back, as you mentioned, like it brings back the power in our court. It's like you can actually do so much for yourself, and you can get also support and help from people that can support you, like Antoinette, on this specific topic. Before you go into a situation where you're completely like powerless and treated like you are broken and need to be fixed, which is not the thing. Everything that our body is giving us at this time, like all the time, but at this time during the perimenopause, it gets a little bit louder. It's sort of like during your cycle, when you get to the actual bleeding time, the body gets louder and it wants to give you the information with a megaphone. It wants to go like, hey, please stop and just take care of yourself. And so that's what's happening. So I absolutely love all of this information. Thank you so much. I'm conscious of the time. I know you have a hard stop. So what I want to add is that Antoinette, you've mentioned that you have a more complete presentation on this. So I'm going to put in the link to that for anyone who's listening and wants to access that presentation by Antoinette. There's going to be a link in the description of this episode. And also Antoinette provides an hormonal support pack for women. And you ship that everywhere, don't you, Antoinette?
Yeah, I do. So the hormonal support pack is kind of my step when I'm dealing with people. And I introduced this because I saw so many people, including some of my own clients, going straight onto HRT, because HRT has had this big comeback in the last 3-4 years. Before that, people weren't really going onto HRT, and suddenly it was everywhere. And like I mentioned earlier, the paid celebrities who were pushing it and all of that. So there was people going straight onto it. And I just wanted to present something, give people something that they could maybe have a taster of what homeopathy is like, without having a consultation, because the consultation will take an hour and it's more expensive. So so the pack is basically it's a contraceptive detox, and it doesn't matter if somebody was on contraceptives 30 years ago, there's still that blueprint left in the body. It supports the adrenals, it supports the liver and the bowel, because I mentioned about constipation, and there's a hormone balancing remedy in there, and that's a 2-month prescription, and for overseas I think it's €48. this is not something you stay on for the rest of your life. You maybe people kind of dip in and out, maybe have some support twice a year, and it seems to get them through. And also, like, I make people very aware of the steps of all the things they can do for themselves. For the people who find that the support pack is not enough, then there's the option of having a consultation with me, and then I find specific remedies for the particular individual, because we're all different, and sometimes the common kind of the general supports are not enough. So there's the three things. You can buy the presentation, which is I think €23. There's more information in it. You can get a pack, which is €48 for overseas, or you can have a consultation, and that starts at €130.
Perfect.
But
And
there's a lot you can do. There's a lot people can do themselves before they even get to that stage.
brilliant. And so all those links are going to be in the description anyway of the episode that you can get, and also the previous episode that we did together. So I'm going to put that in the description too, if you haven't listened to that and you want to catch up to all that powerful information on the menstrual cycle that we shared in the previous episode. So Antoinette, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on again. I absolutely love these conversations. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a million. And I do appreciate being invited on. It's great just to get to share it with other people. And I always encourage women to talk, share the information that you're getting. Don't keep it to yourself. Let other people know, because you'd be surprised how many people don't know this. That we can do something. We can do so much. Not that we can do something, that we can do so much to help ourselves. And it is a great time. And I suppose we have to think about our daughters who are watching us as well, dealing with this. And we want to make it better for them too.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for everyone listening in. And if you have any questions on this, share them in the comment, and you can reach out to me, or also, of course, you can reach out to Antoinette through the links and ask her any questions on this. So with that, I'm going to wish you a wonderful week and lots of love. Bye for now.